In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe, leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Great new day to all my self-care family and friends. Welcome back to another Room to Breathe podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so happy that you made space to be here with us today. Now, before we get into this episode, do me a quick favor. If you are feeling the vibes, go ahead and show us some love. Tap that screen, like, comment, and be sure to share this out with someone who may need a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't already done so, go ahead and hit that follow button. Subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org, where you will find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch and a lot of free resources to help nourish your growth and remind you that you are supported every step of the way. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So give yourself permission to pause, to reflect, and to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly for you. And if anything in today's episode hits home, I want you to drop a green heart in the chat. It is our way of saying I'm healing, I'm growing, and I am showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together.
I'm going to go over 7 cards. I'm going to go over a theme, past, present, future energies, and higher self messages as a whole. And yeah, this is interesting. There's definitely like a weave of, probably a lot of it has to do with like the work that you do as far as like bringing authenticity and owning your power. And then there's also some other things sprinkled in here about like growth and working through some things. So it's like a nice blend. It's not too heavy, but it's got some good lightness to it as well. So our starter point is our theme, which is the 6 of Wands reversed. It is inviting you, and I feel like because it's reversed, it's something that you're already very much aware of and try to do already, but it's kind of like a battle that you have at the moment. The 6 of Wands is all about learning how to fully love yourself unconditionally without feeling like you have to earn it. So a lot of times with the 6 of Wands, that it's this idea of like, okay, once I reach this goal or once I get this thing, then I can celebrate. Like it's almost like you have to work hard to get it. And the invitation around the 6 of Wands is, no, you got up today. You got out of bed today. You're breathing today. That's all that matters. So you can love and celebrate yourself right now just because you're here. And so because it's reversed, I do sense the sense of awareness, like you are aware of this part of you that you need to honor just without conditions. And then there's a part of you that still kind of is stuck in that ego track of like, oh, but I need to do this, I need to do this, and I'll do that a little later once I reach my goal. And so it's like this balance happening. So I feel like this is just a reminder of like, yeah, when you feel like, oh, I'll take the time to celebrate myself later, that's actually when you need to do it right now.
Family, I want you to help me welcome Sarah Tye into the Room to Breathe. Sarah is an intuitive tarot reader, a channel, or a spiritual guide into, just helping people to kind of just grow and, maybe just evolve into the best version of themselves. She is the visionary behind the Spirit Journey Collective, which is a sacred space that helps people reconnect with their authentic selves through tarot, intuitive channeling, and healing work. But before we get into her story today, I just want to take this opportunity to check in with your soul, Sarah. How is your spirit doing today?
That's doing well. I'm excited to be here. This was one of those episodes that I couldn't wait to be on and chat with you. And I'm just excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we are so excited to have you here. And I think one of the things that we bonded by before was that origin story, right? Like getting back to the beginning of how it all started. So let's talk about your beginning, because I think that every healer has a moment, right? Kind of a turning point where our pain becomes purpose. Can you take us back to the beginning where you first realized that you had this gift of intuition and connection to tarot?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite stories to tell because especially when I first started sharing it, I didn't realize how layered it was until I started sharing it more than once. Then I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to it than I even realized, just looking back at first. But yeah, so my journey with tarot initially starts all the way back in high school. That's when I first started playing with cards. It was just me trying to figure out what my beliefs were. I was into all of like the ghost hunting and the paranormal stuff. So of course tarot cards was right up my alley. And so I always had a deck on hand. I'd read for my friend's family for several years. And I will say the beginning, it wasn't necessarily when I became a professional reader, but it was the beginning of me realizing that tarot was more than just entertainment. Because I think a lot of us think, oh, tarot is like fortune telling and it's so fun and entertaining. And then I realized, no, it is medicine. There's so much more to it than that. So about 8 years ago, I was in a marriage that was unfortunately filled with domestic violence. My then husband was struggling with addiction, which led to a lot of the outbursts that I've dealt with. And I also had a 1-year-old daughter as well. And so I was in that place of, should I stay or should I go? Which I know a lot of women have been in that place before. And so for me, I was a stay-at-home mom. I really had no income. I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I was really struggling in that in between place. Well, this one morning after my then husband went to work, my 2 dogs woke me up going ballistic, barking and clawing at my back door, at my like back sliding door, which was strange because we were on the second floor apartment. And so I thought, what are they barking at? And I go and I look, and there's a raven sitting on my balcony, perfectly still, unbothered by my dogs, and just staring at me. And I want to say this interaction probably lasted for maybe 30 seconds. It wasn't crazy long. It felt longer than that. But it left enough of an impact where I thought, what does it mean to see a raven? Right? So of course I pulled out my phone and I Googled it, and I found out that the raven is very closely tied to the death card in tarot, which I know most people, they hear the death card and they think, oh my gosh, how scary. But the death card is one of my favorite cards because it doesn't speak about mortality. It speaks about change, evolution, going from one chapter of your life to another that can feel like a death, right? But it's letting go of what was to now make room for something better that's now going to serve you. And so that prompted me, really for the first time ever, to turn to my deck for something that was more meaningful than just playing around with it, right? And so I grabbed my deck and I actually asked, should I stay or should I go? And I'll never forget the cards that I got for the outcome. If I stayed, I pulled the devil card. The devil just means that you're stuck in a cycle that's not changing. You're, in like it could be a cycle of abuse, which I think is what it was speaking to for me. It's basically saying that you're doing the same things, but you're not getting anywhere. And there's bad habits, bad cycles, poor decisions, toxicity, things like that. And so if I stayed, that was going to be my life. If I left, I pulled the death card, which perfectly correlates with that raven. And for me, it was just that permission of new beginnings are okay. I actually have possibility if I choose to walk away from this situation. And so I did. And after that, I actually turned to my deck for personal decisions all the time. And it was always very consistent. And I always learned something from it. And so I want to say it was in 2020 when, the world shut down. I was really struggling with what are my beliefs? And I was agnostic, so I didn't have any kind of set beliefs. But for me, it was searching for that anchor. And so I started opening up with my spirituality and figuring out what those beliefs were, and was just starting to ask myself what my purpose was. And tarot was the one thing that kept coming to me. And it was the one thing that I kept saying no to. Because I thought, who's going to take me seriously as a tarot reader? That's not something that I can actually do. But when the universe wants you to do something, it will keep bringing it back to your attention. And that's what it did. And so I finally said yes to it. And it was really cool because it was a combination of seeing how I can actually make a difference in the world, and it was like finding a piece of myself at the same time.
Yeah, I think that is so beautiful. And I love how you describe that awakening, right? That pull towards something deeper. It sounds like it wasn't just about, you learning tarot, but remembering a part of yourself that has probably always been there. And I think that that is something that so many people can relate to, stepping into your purpose can feel like sacred and scary at the same time. And of course, that imposter syndrome creeps in, and you're like, this is a joke, And I laughed when you even brought up 2020, because it seems like 2020 was just the birthing year for a lot of healers. That's when I first started stepping into life coaching. And the very first thing that I asked myself was, who's going to take me seriously? You know what I mean? And I was thinking from that surviving person that so many knew. And so I was like, well, people are going to be like, no, I saw where you came from. How are you going to help somebody else? And I'm like, we have to get through that. So I think that, us walking in our purpose is something that is often born from our own healing. And I think that's what makes it so great. You know what I mean? Like that's our testimony to say, hey, I've been where you are. I can, completely understand that. So I'm curious, what role did your own healing journey play into you fully stepping into this work?
It was a huge role. I had to do the healing before I was ready to do any kind of tarot work or working with people. And so I want to say it was a good, I want to say it was a good almost year that I was really just focusing on, inner child work, shadow work, and taking workshops and, really just figuring out like who I am and what I believed in. And it was so interesting because the more I delved into that personal healing, the more I grew in my faith. Like I never realized that the psychological side of healing was so directly like tied into spirituality. Because for before, I always thought it was just something you just believed in and tied into, but that was not my experience at all. It was the more I healed and saw and understood myself, the more I actually understood the world and everyone else around me. It was just a really cool way that unfolded. And so it's interesting because when I look back, I wasn't ready to read for people or to even do this work until I had to do the healing. And actually a really cool story that happened I'd love to share is so it was during the 2020 era that I was doing all this healing. And so I had just signed up for a workshop for, I want to say it was inner child. And so I'm going to preface with, I'm not an alcoholic. I never had a drinking problem. But as a single parent, I'd get my daughter in bed and it was like, oh my God, that glass of wine, right? It was that unwinding thing. And, of course, society encourages that too. They're like, your kid's still alive. Get that glass of wine. You deserve it, especially when you're a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't realize how much I was depending on that. And actually, a more accurate way to put it is it was actually becoming a Band-Aid for me. And so when I signed up for this workshop, I know there's a part of me that was like, when am I going to do this work? When my daughter goes to bed is usually when like I unwind and, it's like my glass of wine time, but I don't want to do this work if I'm inebriated in any way. And, so I was trying to figure out like, when can I even do this work? But I knew I wanted to. And I was just putting groceries away, just random Tuesday. And I heard clear as day, don't keep alcohol in the house. And it was like, it was just this message that was dropped into my head. So it was not mine. I was not thinking about stopping at all. So it was just like, wait, what? you know? And I was a little bit confused and I had to kind of play with it. Like I tried to find some loopholes and whatever else. But that's when I realized, like when I finally just thought, okay, I'm not gonna have any alcohol in the house. I'm not gonna drink. I'm just gonna do this healing work. And that was the first time I started feeling my feelings. In fact, my therapist I was seeing at the time, I remember asking him, I was like, am I addicted? Because I was going through like panic attacks and just overwhelming feelings. And he said, no, you were never drinking enough to be physically addicted to anything. You're just feeling your feelings for the first time when you've been basically numbing this whole time just to survive. And so I had to go through all of that before I was even ready to work with anyone else.
Yeah, that's something that I can totally understand, because society has a very sneaky way of telling us how we're supposed to be or who we're supposed to be. And so, yeah, the 2020s did a number on us, right? Like, when the world shut down, we all ran to kind of social media because we needed community, so we had to build what we couldn't get locally. And it was trending, it was kind of cool seeing how parents were coping to not just being the parent, but being the principal, the teacher, the doctor, the lawyer, like you had to be all the things. And so you're right, a glass of wine. Oh, I used to go out and sit in my car, and I'm like, it was so exciting. I can literally remember one day sitting in my car with I don't know, probably like a little fruity daiquiri or something, and it was like the highlight of my day. And I remember this mom and dad walking down the street with their kid in a stroller, and then the mom just looked at me and was like, hell yeah. And I was like, yeah, like, we deserve this. But I had that moment too where I was just like, actually, I deserve more than this. Like, what am I doing? I'm only doing this because I keep seeing people do it, because it's trending. And so you do have to kind of break that cycle. And that even makes me think even more about tarot, because there's so much of a stigma that is over it. People are like absolutely terrified when it comes to that, especially people who are religious or spiritual, however you want to look at it. They think that it is just something evil. So let's talk about the cards, okay? Because like I said, for some people, I think tarot feels so mysterious. And honestly, in my personal opinion, I think it's often misunderstood. But in the right hands, I think it's not about fear. Yes, are there people who attach negativity and darkness to it? Absolutely. But that's the truth about every single thing that we do. You have bad doctors, bad lawyers, bad teachers, there's evil in the world. So unfortunately, there's always going to be, someone attaching something evil to it. But again, I think that when it comes to tarot in the right hands, that it's not about fear, it's about freedom. And so, just thinking about the stigma or fear that surrounds tarot, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love answering it because there is such a stigma and it's taboo. And, I see a lot more curiosity than I used to, but, it always comes with trepidation. Even when I do, like, when I'm hired for events for like weddings or parties, I always get a good percentage of people who are afraid to sit with me. They sit with me, but they let me know real quick, I'm really afraid right now. And then they leave, but by the time they leave my table, they realize it's not what they think it is. So the way that I like to describe tarot, it's not about raising dark forces or even like, it's not even magical really. The way that I see it, I like to try to look at it more from like a logical lens. I think it's all about intention. I think so like you said, there are people who have bad intentions and they're going to be taking, unfortunately, when they use tarot, they're going to be taking it that direction. But whether you play with tarot on your own, which I'm a big advocate of, everyone can be a tarot reader, not like maybe professionally, but you can all have a deck of your own and pull cards on your own. Like, everyone is capable of that. I mean, it could be a really great spiritual practice. But as far as, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh my God. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Pregnancy brain is a thing. So I'm going to say I'm about 23 weeks for those that are listening. So
Yeah.
definitely fighting that. But yeah, so it's all about intention. So if someone's showing up with ill intent, that's what you're going to find. But when you show up with positive intention, and so the way that I see it is, I believe we're all interconnected. Spiritually, we're all one. And so if you show up with the intention of, I need guidance, and I show up with the intention of just being that channel and that middleman, which is how I see myself, I do not believe any of the wisdom comes from me. I really think that it's coming through me. Then at that point, the intention is healing. The intention is love. And so it's not the cards themselves. Like, I'm just going to demonstrate one of the cards. It's just paper, right? But when you show up with that intention of, I'm going to trust something bigger than myself, that's when the magic is. That's where you find the magic. And another misconception that I like to touch on is, a lot of people think that there are, quote, scary cards. And there are no scary cards, in my opinion. I like to say they're all medicine. So when you take medicine from the doctor, sometimes you get the fruity medicine that tastes good and it's not, it goes down easy. Sometimes you get the horse pill, right? And it's really hard to swallow, but it'll get you better the more you take it. So that's how I like to see the scary cards. So like death, I already touched on that one. That one is about transformation. It's about going from one chapter of your life to another, which does come with a ego death of some sort, right? Like if you get a promotion in your job is never going to look the same because you're going into a completely different position. So your days are going to look different. The people who surround you are going to be different, etc. If you get married, marriage is another big one. You're going from being, legally single, so to speak, to now you're actually committed to someone on paper and legally. So there is a lot that goes into that. Another scary card is the Tower. The Tower is actually a really great analogy for the Tower. If you've ever seen the movie Encanto, that's like the entire movie is a giant analogy for the Tower, because they talk about it was the things were rotting from the inside of the family, right? There was a lot of beliefs that were not helping or serving, right? And it had to come crashing down to rebuild. But when it was rebuilt, the family was more together and they were more one, right? But they had to go through removing what didn't belong anymore. That's what the Tower speaks to, even though it can look scary. So I don't believe there are any bad cards. I think that all the cards have guidance and wisdom. Even if it's not something you want to hear, it's something you need to hear is often what happens.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's also important for people to understand that it's not about predicting the future. You know what I mean? It's literally just about creating alignment with the present. It's that for me, I always looked at it as confirmation for what I already knew. You know what I mean? Because I think that God or the universe, however people want to believe, right? I believe that the universe, we all have like this sense of intuition, but some of us are not as tapped in as others. And so we feel it in our gut, we feel it in our heart, we really know it in our brain, but we're still not ready to act on it. And so I think that for me, tarot is a way to say, okay, I know, but I really want to know if I know this, am I making this up? And then it's like when I go into it, like you said, I go into it with an idea that there's something on my heart. I want a little guidance on XYZ. And then I pull up and you're like, yeah, this says that this is not that. Or, and then I'm like, yeah, I knew that. So it's kind of like a confirmation sort of thing. And so I don't know. I really just wish people would understand that it's not to predict your future. It is literally just to kind of confirm what 9 chances out of 10 you already know. It should be used as motivation. You know what I mean?
I'm so glad you mentioned that because that was, yes. So pregnancy brain, that was one of the ones I was going to mention too. Because so I know that there are those that read tarot and they do focus a lot more on the future. And I do think that there are different people with different gifts. So there are those that can, the way I see it, tap into a timeline. It's not even like they're tapping into the only one they're tapping into as of right now, what you're most leading towards. But I personally prefer to work in the present. There is almost always a future card on the table. But to me, that's just kind of like a projection of what to expect. But you can change that at any time based on what we do in the now, because I'm a big, big believer in free will. But I also, the way that I see it too, is if you only focus on the future, now you're just waiting around for something to happen versus what I love to do is give guidance right now. So what do you need to know now to get where you want to go? Are you okay with the future outcome on the table or do you want to change it? And if you need to change it or you want to, how do you do that? How do you evolve to that place? And so I'm really, really glad you mentioned that because it's really not, it can be a form, again, of seeing where you're headed, but that's not the best way to use it, in my opinion. It's really more about what do you need to know now? And I loved how you mentioned the confirmation because that's what I hear 9 times out of 10 is, oh my God, I knew that already. Right? They get the validation, the confirmation, and it almost always has to do with whatever's directly happening in their life. So it's like not even something that happened a long time ago or something that hasn't happened yet. It's like most of the time I hear, oh my gosh, this week or earlier today or last week, this was exactly the thing that was on my mind. And so it's And it's not even like the specific, like I can't tell you your specific situation. I pick up the energies on it. And so what happens is you hear that and you're hearing what basically is being mirrored to you what you already know, like you so beautifully said. So to me, tarot is about empowerment. It's about reflection and guidance. It's not about telling you what is. And if you ever have a reader that tries to tell you, oh, this is going to happen no matter what, please take your money and run. Because
Right.
that's someone who's not in integrity.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like, just run, head for the hills. But I mean, but that also speaks to you doing the research and doing the work in advance. That's the same thing. Like, I feel like when people go to a doctor or, any sort of like coach, like even just the physical coach, anything like that, they go in there expecting some sort of miracle, some sort of whatever. And like that person, they have tools, they have resources, but no one can guarantee the outcome of your life. You know what I mean? And so it's really important for people to do the research to understand what it is that you're signing up for and what is your intention. What do you want out of it? I could come to you and get a reading from you, but I have to know what were my intentions going into it. What was I expecting out of it? Was I, did I want to gain clarity? Did I want to get an answer? Did I want to know what to do next? So you have to kind of, again, just set your intention for what it is that you want, what you're hoping to get out of it, and just be real about it. I think that a lot of times we have unrealistic expectations of what we're hoping that someone else is going to do for us. But at the end of the day, our life is in our hands. We make things happen. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
That's a really great, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's another big important part that I like to focus on is if you come to a reader, you have to have self accountability. You can't come and hope that the reader's going to tell you what to do, because I've had people come to me and they want me to tell them what to do, and that's not my job or even my place. Like, even if someone says I have two options, I'm looking at moving to this state to go to this school, or move to this state and go to this school, just for example, I have a decision spread where I'll tell them the energy around one option and energy around the other, but I will not tell them which one that they should do. Even if one on the table is a lot more obvious than the other one,
Mm-hmm.
it's their choice. Or another example is if someone comes to me in a, maybe a toxic relationship asking, should I stay or should I go? And even if leaving is the obviously better option, they might choose to stay, and that just means that they're not ready. That means that their soul is still learning the lesson it needs to learn. It's not my place to tell them what they should do. It's my place to basically put the power back in their hands and help them understand with discernment which option feels better to them. And so, but that comes with accountability. You have to be able to account for your own choices. And so that's a big one. And then something else, you mentioned how you can never guarantee the outcome, even if you see like a doctor or a coach. It's really similar. I love this analogy. It's like the universe is going to give you the ingredients to make a cake, but you have to put the ingredients together, right? You have to do that work to bake the cake. The cake's not going to make itself. So it's that same idea. When you come to a reader, have the intention of guidance, have the intention of what do I need to know? Because often what will come through is, again, like you mentioned, confirmation, validation, but also a sense of discernment that you didn't have before. But you have to be willing to take hold of that. And another aspect, when I say that, how I don't like to focus on the future, I like to really focus on the present. A big element of the present is also understanding that your choices have led you to where you are now. And that could be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of us, especially if we don't like the situation we're currently in. But understanding that there were choices that were made that led us here. And so to me, choice is actually like the biggest way to freedom, because once you realize I'm here because of the choices I've made, now I know I can make different choices to lead me to a different future. And so that's why the personal accountability piece is so important.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And one of the things that I always say as a life coach to my clients is that healing requires honesty, right? And I think that tarot, like you said, kind of has a way of holding up a mirror to you. For it just kind of reflects what you want to see or what you're hoping to see. And so as you talk about the importance of self accountability, how does tarot encourage people to own their own choices and growth?
Oh, that is a really great question. And some people aren't ready to see it either. So I will say probably a good 95% of my clients, the people who I've done readings for, they're grateful. They're grateful for that mirror because it helps them see what they weren't ready to see, but they needed to see. And so, what I've been told by several different people is what I do, it's like shining a light on like the exact, it's like pinpointing exactly what the thing is. And so, like, one thing is, I'm a big fan of therapy, and I think that everyone should go to therapy at one point or another. But I do believe sometimes talk therapy can get you talking in circles and avoiding the actual problem.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas tarot will just go right to it. It'll just like, nope, it's right here. This is the thing. And especially because when I read for someone, I'm just picking up the energies, right? I don't know that that's the one thing that they're trying to subconsciously avoid, right?
Yeah.
It's just that's what's coming through. And so I've had so many people just be really grateful for that because it's the thing that they knew was there, like the elephant in the room, but they didn't want to acknowledge it. But you can't run from it when a total stranger is able to go and push that button, right? That is able to just see it. So um, that's something that I think has been really good for a lot of people to acknowledge it. And again, you have to be open because there have been some who I would say that those that the like the 5% that I didn't land with, it's not even that they were offended by it. It was more that they just couldn't hear me. It's really
Yeah.
the best way to put it. They were just like, oh, I don't get it. I don't get it. Is
Yeah.
usually what I would get from that. And I'm not the reader for everyone. So it sounds like they probably needed someone else to be that mirror because they weren't ready to fully look at it.
Yeah. And, a big part of any sort of healing, anytime you go into anything like that, you have to be open. And I would honestly say that 5% was probably not even really truly open to it, or maybe they didn't even understand what they were stepping into. Because I think if you don't understand tarot, if you don't set your intention going into it, then when someone puts a mirror in your face, you're just like, what? I see me. What do you mean? What do you want me to do? Is something wrong with my hair? Like they have no clue as to what they're supposed to do with it. And a lot of people don't even understand what that mirror work is or that shadow work. It's like that. It's something they take for granted because your shadow isn't something you typically see like in front of you. It's always something that's kind of following behind you, and so I always say that mirror work is that truth work, and it's what brings us face to face with our shadows. Um,
Yeah.
can you share how tarot connects with shadow work and why facing those hard truths can be so transformative for people?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like what I said. It pinpoints on the thing, whether you are fully wanting to hear it or not. And I can't tell you how many times in a reading I've heard that's not the answer I wanted, but I know it's the answer I needed to hear. And so I think that the thing about tarot, because there's different kinds of cards for those that are listening. There's angel cards, there are oracle cards, and then there's tarot. And so the angel and oracle cards tend to be more, I like to kind of say light and fluffy because they're beautiful and they have their place, but they're more affirmations and building up. Whereas tarot, one of the things I love about it is it gets into the nitty gritty. It's not going to hold back. It's not going to sugarcoat, and so and which makes it tricky for me. But I think I've just learned to just, like I said, be that channel and then just speak with tact, so that way what I share, even if I know it's not what they want to hear, I'm able to share it gently. So I do think the way the message comes across matters. And so that's why I'm not going to be the reader for everyone, because someone might need someone who's a little more blunt, right? Whereas I'm going to be direct, but I'm going to be like gentle about it. I'm like, it's like taking someone by the hand and saying, look, I know that you don't want to hear about this because this is hard to hear, but this is what you need to hear. And so I've seen a lot of growth from it though, and even personally, especially when you like when I read for myself, sometimes there are certain cards I'll pull, and I'm like, this one again, but I know why
Yeah.
it's there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And most people know why it's there, and I think that that's really what it's about. It's just bringing that awareness to them, because we can't do anything until we're fully aware, right?
Yeah.
If we're not aware, there's no you're not aware. It's buried. But once it's brought to your attention, you can ignore it, you can sidestep it, you push it under the rug, but there's gonna be a part of you that knows, oh no, that's still there. It's not
Yeah.
going anywhere. And so I think the awareness is the first step to change. And I think that that's where a lot of the shadow work can be really helpful from tarot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so funny because I think that a lot of times we are afraid of healing in general, because healing is messy. It's ugly. It exposes the thing, that we have been conditioned for years to hide. A lot of people grew up in the households where, they say like what happens in this house stays in this house, or you don't go out there and tell our business. You know what I mean? Things like that. So when it comes to healing, it's already a scary thing because we've been raised to be quiet. We don't talk about that. You don't tell so and so's business and stuff like that. So I would imagine, with tarot, just like with the work that I do as far as life coaching, how it's a scary thing for people. But I think that once people move past the fear, it is amazing how much clarity that they gain. In your experience, how can tarot actually serve as a tool for empowerment and clarity rather than something that's scary and mystical?
Yeah, so I would say it comes back to that intention piece. So that's all part of it, and then also, like you said already, being open. So like if you're reading on your own, for instance, now that can get tricky. The only thing I'd say about reading on your own, if you're not like a professional, is sometimes you see what you want to see and not what's actually there, right? So that's probably the only thing. And we have the same problem. I'll go to another reader if I start to feel like I'm not being honest with myself, just to make sure that I'm seeing what I need to see. Yeah. So when you go in with what you were saying about being open and honest, like that's a big part of it, because when you're open, even if what comes through isn't what you're hoping for, you're going to recognize it. I think that that's part of it, is you're going to recognize how it affects you. You're going to recognize, oh, I understand why that came up. I understand why that's on the table. If you go in thinking it's just going to be a mystical woo woo experience from like a, ooh, tell me my future, but like, not really
Yeah.
ready to like dive into anything serious or deep, that's all you're going to take from it. Right? You're just going to, it's just going to be a fun experience that maybe you'll look back on. But if you go in open and you go in really truly with the intention of, I want to grow and evolve it, how can I do that? Where am I going from here? What do I need to know? Or I'm feeling stuck and I don't know how to get unstuck, right? When you go in open, you're going to let the message that needs to land.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, as we were talking about, like with the whole healing thing and people coming in with like these preconceived ideas, or even people come in, instead of with intentions, they come in with expectations, right? Like, oh, I expect you to tell me something good. And then when you say something that doesn't come off good to them, they're like, eh. You know what I mean? So it kind of like sets the tone for things. And I think that that's where most people pause. And they get stuck on thinking like, oh, well, healing is supposed to be pretty. I was supposed to come into this reading and get something, that, I don't know, that, oh, she was supposed to tell me I'm going to hit the lottery, or, just crazy expectations that people come into it with. They thought that they were going to leave out the door with the winning numbers or something, not realizing that, just like any part of healing, because tarot is healing, that any part of healing, it's not always pretty. It's one of the things that I say about healing is that it's real, it's raw, it's revealing, right? And so if there's someone listening right now, who feels afraid to kind of face the cards, right, or what the cards might reveal about them, what would you tell them, as they're getting ready to maybe enter into a reading, but they're kind of scared of what the cards hold for them, or are going to say for them?
I'd say first and foremost, try not, I mean, obviously, if you're scared, you're scared. Like, that's a valid feeling. But understand that the cards are always going to be there to help you. Like, that's their job. So when I say that they're all medicine, they're all medicine. There are no bad cards. Don't be afraid of like what they're going to tell you, because what they're going to tell you is what's going to help bring you to your next level, to evolve to the next place. And I love how you share how healing is messy, because it totally is. And it reminds me of how I describe going from the caterpillar to the butterfly, because it's kind of a similar journey, right? Because often when you do that healing, you're not the same version of yourself when you get to the other side. And so with the analogy that I use, people will see a cocoon on a branch and it looks like, well, nothing's happening. That's what's happening in there. It's just sitting still, right? Nothing's happening. But on the inside, it is literally becoming a gooey mess. This caterpillar went in, and because it's becoming a different creature, it has to become a gooey mess first. So I do like to say that if you feel like you're a gooey mess, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look pretty, like you said, but you're transforming into a different version of you. So while the caterpillar is physically transforming into a different creature, you are metaphorically doing the same thing. And so I would say be open, trust yourself. That's another big one. Because if you go see a reader who is going to tell you that all of your instincts are wrong, that's another example of run for the hills. Because what you should find in a reading is clarity, and a sense of, oh, okay, this was already something I was feeling, but I didn't know how to name. Or I didn't know if this was the right decision. Now I'm starting to trust myself more. Because what a reading should do is help you feel closer to yourself, not farther from yourself. Not to the point where you're second guessing yourself more. It's actually going to help you second guess yourself less. So I would say be open and just try to release the fear if you can, and understand that the cards, and by the way, for those that are listening who are more religious and do feel like the cards, there's a lot of like stigma, especially for religious people. They're not dominational. Like, there's no denomination with the cards. I've read for several Christians, for instance, right? I like to say it's whatever higher power you believe in, that's what's showing up for you. So if it's God, right? So trust that when you go into a reading, that you're asking for guidance from who you trust as well, which is however it's going to look for you. And I feel like that's also a big part of it. Because for me, when I first started reading, reading professionally, I had a lot of fears because I didn't want to give out the wrong information. I didn't want to share anything that wasn't going to be truthful or helpful, right? And so for me, reading is a very spiritual experience, because I literally remove my ego to the point where I'm just the mouthpiece. I'm just the channel. Even if someone comes to me and they tell me like their situation where maybe my ego is like, oh yeah, you should leave that situation. That's not my place. I will not say that. I will read what comes through the cards. And so a good reader will also be able to help create that space for you where they're being that channel and you're showing up for the guidance from your higher power.
Absolutely. And it's so much like a life coach. You know what I mean? We just use different tools. And I think that, with anything, when you step in to try to help someone else heal, or you're trying to help someone else gain clarity, you have to put your feelings to the side. There's plenty of times when I have clients and, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, are you crazy? Like, of course you should go, this is not where you should be. But again, I have to kind of put that to the side, because my opinion doesn't serve them if all I do is if I'm projecting my views and opinions on someone else, and that's not what they're there for, and so it's something that I think being a good tarot reader or a good life coach, is to be smart enough and be respectful enough for us to set our personal opinions to the side, to allow, whatever higher being that we honor to move through us, so that way we can be the vessel that we signed up to be, and help someone make it to their next stage in their life. I think that openness and willingness to receive messages is great for the people who are signing up with us, but we also have this obligation to be open and willing to deliver a message as well. So I mean, I don't know. I think that it kind of goes both ways, with us giving out the information, but then other people coming into it with us to receive that information as well.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd add too is sometimes, and this is, because I know with coaches, they work with you more directly, and you see them on a like daily basis, or maybe weekly basis or monthly basis. Whereas tarot, and I'll tell people, because they'll ask me, how often should I see you? And I'll say, whenever you feel you need the guidance. Like, it's not I'm not the same thing as like a therapist where, you know, you're going to see me every week. I mean, unless you want to and you feel that's going to help you. Like, that's not what I'm not, I'm just here for if you feel like you need that guidance and you feel like you're maybe a little lost or something, that's when you come. So with tarot, one thing that I will say is sometimes it doesn't land right away. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll have someone tell me maybe a few months down the line, a year down the line, or whatever, when it finally hit them, when it finally made sense to them. So it's a little bit different from like a coach who's going to see you more on a normal basis. But with tarot, sometimes you're just not ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And like I had one, I was doing an event and it was a repeat event. So I think the first event I did was a Halloween event, and the second one I did was like a family birthday party. But it was the same family who were hiring me. And the one of the people had just set me up, and he turned to one of the guys that was nearby and was like, "Oh, there's a tarot reader here if you want to come see her." And he's like, "Nah, she didn't tell me anything good last time," which was awkward. But you know, it's like, I'm sorry about that because I don't remember. Like, I release it once I do the reading. It's not mine to hold, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to say it was about 30 minutes after that. He came back over and he's like, "You know what though? All you really told me was that I needed to get off my butt and start doing things, because I just sat and watched TV all day, and you were just encouraging me to get out there and do more things. And I didn't want to hear that at the time, but I actually started doing that in the months that since he'd seen me last. He said I started getting out there more and doing more things, and actually I can see why you told me what you did, and it's been helpful." So I mean, I didn't ask for that. He must have, after he said that, there must have been some kind of a reflection period where he started thinking about what he was told, how he actually handled it without even like consciously realizing that he was taking advice from what he learned, you know what I mean? And then was able to put two and two together. So that's just kind of a fun story. And I've had other versions of that. But, you know, it's sometimes, it could also be that they're just not ready to hear it yet. And when they're ready, that's when they'll know.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's all about the energy. You know, just like with every single thing we do, it's all about the energy. I think that people fail to understand that anytime you have an interaction with another human being, that you are exchanging energy with one another. And so if I came into, you know, a conversation with you and I have negative energy, then that conversation is probably going to go negatively, especially if I'm the first one to speak out the gate, you know, because I'm influencing what happens. And so I think that people fail to understand that, you know, if you go into something thinking the worst and expecting the worst, well, it's a good chance that you're going to get some negative energy or some negative feedback. Or even if you give the best reading, you know, the most positive, optimistic reading, and you even gave them the winning lottery numbers, right? If they come in it with this negative idea or, you know, this bad energy, it's going to create a block where they can't even receive what it is that you're trying to give them, you know? And so I think that people really need to understand that energy matters. You know, especially in a space that you're coming into for some sort of healing, or, you know, even just thinking about a reading, right? Your energy that you bring into that really matters, because I think that your overall energy can kind of shape the reading that you receive. And so I think that it's very important for people to approach the reading with an open heart and an open mind. Can you think of like another time where mid-reading somebody was like, aha, and you just kind of seen the wall come down?
Yeah, so that's happened a few different times, and that's always an interesting one for me because usually those particular clients are very stoic and they don't give any, like, and I don't look for tells by any means, but you know, but there are certain people who just nothing. It's like you're speaking to a brick wall, right? And in those moments, I really, really just have to keep trusting myself in the message and just keep. I like to say that when I read, because it's more of that channeling, I just start talking and I just let whatever comes out of my mouth, whatever needs to come out, come out. And so there was this one woman I remember reading for at a bridal shower. And I remember everyone was like super open and having fun. And this older woman sat down and she just kind of had this, like, impress me kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, she just wasn't there wasn't a lot of reciprocation at all. And so I just read to her what I was feeling and I just trusted the process. And then as soon as I was done, she stopped, I stopped and like said, okay, that was the reading. And she's like, okay, well, let me tell you exactly how that fit into my life because you were spot on. And I never would have known that because of the way that she was sitting. And maybe so I mean, it might be that maybe she was listening and not, and it was spot on from the beginning, or maybe she was skeptical, and it wasn't until the end that she was able to piece it all together. But I get more of that, where I'll get the no reaction, nothing, just staring at me blankly while I read for them. And then it's like most of the time they'll explain to me how it fits and why, and which I super appreciate, because that's just validation, because in those moments I'm not sure if I'm way off or not, but I get those. I want to say they're probably like 10 to 15% of the clients I sit with where I don't know, but by the end they explain to me how it works. And so I get those ones quite a bit.
Yeah. I think everybody kind of goes into it when you're not comfortable with it. They kind of go into it with the poker face, like, I got to be strong. And we're afraid, like, because I can even honestly say when I first started, I was like, okay, I'm afraid to show any sort of emotion or anything because then it won't be real. You know what I mean? I don't want to say too much. Don't want to do, you know what I mean? Like, you just come in with your guard up. And so I think what you're saying is also, just a powerful reminder that overall, I mean, healing is a partnership, right? And so I think that it's not just about what the cards have to say, but it's also about what you're actually ready to hear. So again, that goes back to the intention. Why are you even sitting down with the person? Because if tarot is not something that you believe in, if you're not ready to be open and hear what this person has to say, then just why are you here? Like, what are you doing? And so are there ways, that you, I don't know, maybe things that you do to kind of help people prepare energetically or mentally for the reading, so that way when they arrive, they're, ready to fully receive the message?
Yeah, so if you order a reading from my website, you'll be able, like, there'll be like an exam, like a place where you explain what the reading's for. And then there is an area where I just, talk about just coming in with open intentions. But it really doesn't take, you can always do grounding meditation if you want, whatever you feel that you need to be more open. Um, but usually it's just a conversation. It really is. Like, it's not going to be, if it's at a party where I'm on a time crunch, it's going to be a little quicker and I'm going to have to, because there's usually a line. But if you're getting like a one-on-one reading with me, that time is yours. And so it's wherever we need so we could start with a question and then just branch out. But it really just becomes more of a conversation back and forth. And so it's not anything that's like really woo-woo or anything like most people think. It's just come in open and and tell me what you need to know. I'll share what I'm seeing, and then we can dive deeper depending on where it takes us. And I did want to mention too, just kind of piggybacking off of the going in strong, or I don't want to give too much details.
Right.
I do offer email readings, and those are actually one of my favorites because they're probably the most validational for me, because when I get an email reading, and it's also the most affordable readings that I offer, you basically just send in a question. It's just a question. There's no voice, there's no video. You don't even have to tell me any kind of backstory. It could just be a simple question. So, backstories help me get a little more context, but I can do it without the backstory. And so what you get with that is a 17 to 25-minute voice recording, depending on how long the reading ends up being, and the picture of the cards. And so you kind of get that without the direct interaction with me, but you also get the validation when you hear things that, again, like you said before, are validational or confirmational, or things that line up perfectly with your current situation that I have no privy to, especially through an email reading, because there's nothing connecting us other than the text, right?
Right.
That almost, I feel like for me it's validational, because when I do get feedback, it's, like I said, like a good 95% of the time it's very positive. But for them too, I think it is as well, because there's nothing that makes sense as to how I should have been able to give them the information they got. And that's just me trusting spirit, them getting the information they're getting because they're trusting spirit, and it's all the around the intentions. So, for those that are more skeptical and don't, and are afraid, well, what if she's just reading into me or reading my tells? You can go that route and, just kind of avoid that altogether, because there are other options.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing that you even offer that because, yeah, some people are literally afraid to show their face. I think that that's the thing that stops many people from doing any sort of healing, any sort of work with themselves, because it's bad enough that we have to look at ourselves in the mirror, but then to have to look at myself in the mirror in front of someone else, it's definitely a scary thing. And I've been on both sides of that. I have been the person that people sit on the couch for, and I've also sat on the couch for someone else. So I 100% get that. And again, I think it's just amazing that you even offer that. I think that that's a way to, it's like an introductory way into that. And then it allows people to build that trust with you, because if I'm emailing you and I'm like, ooh, she don't even know me, and I'm getting that and I'm understanding that, then maybe it opens the door for me to say, okay, now I want to go deeper. Like, now I want to connect. So I love that you offer different levels for people, not just, from a financial aspect, but for comfort level, to allow people to say, you know what, there's really no excuse for you to get help. It's just like therapy when you go in and they have different levels for things. Or for me, like life coaching, I offer different levels for things. I like how you meet people where they are. I think that's just amazing. For someone who's listening who may be curious, right? Maybe they've always been drawn to tarot, but they didn't know where to start, or, of course it's just been taboo for years, right? Let's give them something real that they can hold on to right now. So for somebody who's listening, who's curious but scared or maybe hesitant, what's the first step that they can take towards exploring tarot safely?
Honestly, I'm a big advocate of just get yourself a deck, and specifically get one that calls to you. So, I mean, there's like some stigmas around, like, oh, you shouldn't buy your own deck. Someone should gift it to you. And it's just silly superstition, in my opinion. I bought all of my decks and they're amazing. So, and there's many different kinds. I mean, there's some that are geared towards like TV shows or movies, if you're like a fan of something, or there's other ones with just beautiful art, like they all vary. And then there's also the typical writers versus weight. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's Rider's Waite. Anyways, that's the original tarot deck. And so that one is, if you like more of the authentic, you want to go that route, they've got that too. But my biggest suggestion is to just get yourself a deck. And all decks come with a little card, like not card, sorry, a little booklet. And so they'll tell you a little bit about each card. So you don't have to be a professional, and just play with it. Just see how it lands, see how it resonates. I mean, I will say, I think that there's so many different tools out there that tarot isn't going to be for everybody. Sometimes people like working with pendulums, or they prefer the oracle cards, or, there's all sorts of different kinds of tools, like I said. But if you're curious and you're drawn to it, I'd say just get a deck and give it a shot. Just play with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so funny that you said that, because I remember my first deck, I bought it because it was women in hip hop and R&B, and I love music. So I got it simply because of that. And I was like, okay, if this is something I'm really going to get into, I know these artists. So rather than me having to learn the cards, specifically like what each one means, I get to, resonate with music artists that I already know and things like that. So I was like, oh, this will be fun. But then I also had a friend of mine where she said a deck spoke to her, but for me. And so she bought me a deck as well. And I really haven't taken the time to connect. I shared this with you, off cam before, that I have these, two decks that I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm called to do something, even if just for myself. I'm not saying I'm going to jump out and start doing readings next week, but I think that if it is something that you're interested in, you're right, just try it. And, if you mention, hey, I'm into this, and then a deck speaks to, someone else for you, then obviously they'll gift it, or, hopefully they'll gift it to you. But you don't have to just hold out and wait for somebody to hand you something. Like, you have the power to do that, or maybe speak to someone to say, hey, what would you suggest that I get? Or could you recommend something for me? Things like that. Sometimes we have to, grab the bull by the horns. Sometimes we have to take it into our own hands. You can't just sit and keep waiting for, people to do that. But yeah, I want to say thank you so much, Sarah. I think that this conversation has been enlightening for me, as well as, it's going to be such an amazing gift for our community. So I just want to thank you for bringing your light, your wisdom, and your truth into this space. If people wish to connect with you, can you please share with us how they can, reach out and connect with you, or if they want to get a reading, or, just kind of tap into your project?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could find me at spiritjourneycollective.com, all spelled out. And you'll find I also have a podcast. It's currently on pause, but there's still over 100 episodes there if you wanted to check out what's there until I get it back up and going, which you are my most recent, or one of my most recent guests. So it's definitely an episode worth checking out. But I also am on Instagram, and that's spirit_journey_collective. I'm on YouTube, and but yeah, if you want to work with me, I have my email readings that I mentioned. I also have one-on-one sessions that range from 30 minutes to an hour, whatever is in your budget or what you're looking for. I do events for anyone who happens to be local to me in Southern California. And yeah, so those are the two places that you can find me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for, being here today and just taking time out of your day, just to, I don't know, maybe just to educate people on what it is. And just honestly, I thank you for being that vessel, to help other people heal. Like I said, I honestly believe that the work that you're doing is so similar and so aligned with the work that I'm doing. And at the end of the day, we just want to be a vessel, or maybe just a resource for people to just really go out there and live their best life. So thank you for being obedient to, what you've been called to do. I know even after sitting down, I did a reading with you, and I was just like, oh yeah. Like I had a whole moment in that reading. You guys will see it one day, don't worry. But I definitely was encouraged and empowered, and even afterwards, from sitting down with you, there were a lot of things that I was able to reflect on, and I had a conversation with my husband about, like, oh, I can't wait for you to see this, just kind of telling him, how it confirmed what I already knew. But now I'm like, okay, I'm ready to act on it. So I just thank you for being who you are, and showing up to do the work that you do. So keep going, and I think that it's something, I don't know, it's just such a blessing that something as simple as just sitting with yourself, just being honest with yourself, and, with you, the work that you're doing as far as just pulling a card and allowing spirit to speak. I think that that's just an amazing thing. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you for having me and for being open. And I mean, I love educating about tarot because I found it to be so healing and medicinal. And I think that there's just so many people who don't know it that way. So I'm always grateful for the opportunity to share about it, to share my experiences with it, to do this line of work. And so thank you for having me too.
Not a problem. We are always happy to have you here in the Room to Breathe. And family, listen, if this conversation spoke to your soul, please go follow Sarah. I will be sure to link all of her contact information in the description of this podcast, so that way you can reach out to book your own reading or just tap in and learn more. As always, you guys, I want to leave you with a little extra love and light before we part ways. I am here to always encourage you to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every single moment in between. I want you to keep choosing peace, even if it feels out of reach. And know that here at the Self Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life, and I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Thank you.
I found my